Yeah, everybody turned them off of it.
quickly. I guess we'll call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the City Council. And council members, I might just add that if necessary, we can make motions at this particular meeting. With that, roll call.
Mayor Yanish.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Amon. Nelson.
Here.
Johnson. Dockin.
Here.
Fagerly.
Here.
DeBleek.
Here.
7 present, 2 absent.
With that in mind, I think we'll get right into the organizational study. Mr. Furman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Great to be back. I'm going to pick up my pace a little bit here today, and if I'm going along too fast, let me know. But really want to breeze through this thing so we can get into any discussion that you might have. First of all, I wanted to take one step back and just kind of outline the assumptions that we had going into this study. And when we walked into it, you need to put assumptions on the table so you know what parameters do you want to start from. And one of them was that the council would support the process and the administrator would have opportunities to explore options in the best interest of the city. That was one of the things that was identified. There would be significant involvement with the city staff. I think we've done that. Key stakeholders would be involved in meetings and focus groups to determine the ideal state model identification process. So in other words, I wouldn't just be identifying models in a vacuum. I would be going to those people impacted by the models. I would get full and timely access to staff who had needed information, and I received that, or I should say we did. We had a contact person for setup of interviews with key staff, and that was the administrative office. The management team would fully support the project, in other words, be helpful, and they were. And important too is absent of a strategic direction, we assume the city will continue to provide services, at a current level. We didn't have a. So the framework that we're providing really is saying if you were moving on today without any change in service level, this is the way an organization would look. If later you decide that the service level that we're providing should be at a different level, well then the model can be adjusted. So these were the assumptions that we made. Some of the leadership recommendations, hold an off-site retreat, and you plan that, and that's great. I really think that that's a great first step to identifying those common values, creating goals, expectations of the administrator, and enhancing the relationship with the mayor and the administrator. I think all of those type of things can come through the off-site retreat. And then if conduct a citywide survey. The sample of people that we talked to was great, and the names you provided, we talked to a lot of very nice people. But it doesn't, 30 people is not going to be, or 45 people is not going to be enough to get a whole sense of where the community is at. And so perhaps a survey would also be important, and maybe something you could do in conjunction with a retreat. And we also recommend, just in a general sense, building that strong partnership between the council and the business community, or overall city and business community. I think it creates a healthy community. And working on those contracts, getting those settled. You've had some contracts that have sat unsettled for a couple of years, and I think that's important. As far as engagement, sort of the model that we used, and this is basically what we programmed before, is that the values and the culture drive our overall satisfaction of our group, of the people who work for us, their loyalty and productivity, which leads to greater customer satisfaction, and our organizational financial performance. And I know we don't always think in financial performance of a city, but I think it's important to do that. When we talk about engagement, and that was a center point of a lot of the study, and it's kind of, well, all right, well, what kind of returns do you get on that? Gallup has been following engagement and impacts on businesses for a couple of decades. In 2012, they reviewed their work and updated it, and as you can see here, all this basically does is give you, from left to right, effects of the increased engagement on your organization. In other words, so what happens when employees and you are engaged together, kind of on the same page? Absenteeism with engaged workplaces is 37% less. Turnover, those two columns, is either down between 25 and 60%. Stealing from the organization goes down 28%. Safety incidents decrease by almost 50%. Patient safety incidents, we don't have, well, you have that at the hospital as part of our organization, but so that you can apply that there. And defects, in other words, the quality problems that you face go down 41%. Customer satisfaction goes up by 10%, productivity 21%, and profitability goes up 22%. So this is measuring over 25 million 25 million management studies, and so it's really an exhaustive look at the impacts. Then I thought, boy, I'm really curious where you're at, and so if we start rearranging some services, what is the impact? And I took a look at your general levy and your general fund budget, looked at a home value worth $151,000 in the city, pays $425 a month in taxes, about $35 a month, and looked at what is subtracting $100,000 or adding $100,000. Give us depth perception as how does this impact your typical homeowner in the community? And I also took a look at, well, what else do we do as homeowners? Most of us own cell phones. $50 a month would be pretty cheap today, but threw that up there. Internet, same. Car insurance, $100. Cable, $50 if you can get it for that. And I took a look at some of the more visible services. And based on that home value of $151,000, a resident pays $9.45 a month in Wilmer, in a home valued at that, for police services. Fire, $1.40 a month. Public Works, $5.25, and that gives you, and Public Works, that includes your playgrounds, it includes your plowing, it includes your mowing and all the other things that Public Works provides. Engineering, which has been a real focal point, is based on the budget that was passed, which is a fully outfitted engineering department, is $1.15 or 4 cents a day. And then there you have the total city bill per month is $35, $1.17, and you can kind of see how the values, and so I like to say that you're doing a great job, council and community, of giving the residents really, when you take a look at it compared to other services, a pretty good service. If you were to lop off $100,000, decrease, that total city bill would go down 86 cents a month. So that gives you an idea when people see the numbers that you have that you deal with, kind of shows based on how revenues are collected today what it means. I'm going to switch now to yep, it's up now. This is something we looked at, and I made some modifications here. I checked in one more time with public works crew and engineer, wastewater treatment and planning, and reviewed the recommendations that I was making in the final report and saw where I was in lockstep with them and where I wasn't. And the recommendation that I'm making out of here that has support from most, I would say for the most part up here on the wall, is that we need a city engineer, we need it desperately, and we need the technician. We should either fully staff our engineering department back to where it can be functional, or I don't see any sense in having one at all. It's really crippling a lot of our activities, and so no doubt about it, it's a service that we need to either provide or get somebody on board as a contract that's going to be able to manage all of it. But from all the indicators on revenue that is generated, and you saw the impact of 4 cents a day, I don't know where we're really gaining a lot by pushing it outside the door. I think it belongs indoors, in with us. In this particular case, you'll see that there's a community services director position. Essentially, rather than having a public works director, the engineer reporting to that person, the engineer, and being the engineer is now doing more design and reporting to a community services director. The planning department loses a director position, so that goes away, and you're left with a senior planner, a public works superintendent, wastewater treatment superintendent, and then something, the other new twist, if you will, it can come later on down the road, but right now your facilities are not being managed. I shouldn't say all of them. Wastewater treatment does a pretty good job of overseeing all their maintenance on that building. But you have buildings out there that are not getting attention, and it's not so much that the position will pay for itself tomorrow, but it will down the road. Getting these regular rotations of building maintenance, whether it be set up for the filter changes, just simple stuff like that. The regular maintenance that the buildings need is falling through the cracks. For the most part, it falls on your public works department, and they provide people when they can, but no one's keeping really a track of, all right, here's a regular maintenance on this building, here's on this building, and so as things come up, they handle it, but I just think you're waiting for major repairs down the road that can be avoided. Under the public works superintendent, you see parks foreman, infrastructure foreman. They really said, you know what, we had that sort of division before. We're not really looking, we think that might be sending the wrong message. And so rather than do that, either have one foreman or two, if you do have two foremen, those positions just be called foreman, but not identified as emphasis in parks and emphasis in infrastructure. The purpose behind doing that in the first place was to try and make sure that our institutional knowledge gets fed down into people so we don't lose these histories of what's going on. You've got a couple of people that are going to be leaving soon that are carrying with them an awful lot of history of the city of where everything is. And so that was a concern of mine. So that's basically the external environment that we are looking at. Originally, I said a facilities maintenance coordinator could come from the public works staff. Not really sure if that's possible or not. I've been kind of told that might not be as easy as I have it on paper. So I'll take one there, a haircut on that, although that's getting more and more difficult. That was a joke, by the way. Work with me here. So then, you know, the ability to cross-train, I think, is there, and I think you do that. But they're by no means overstaffed in Public Works Department right now, and as people have left, we have not been replacing positions. So either we have to do less activity or keep them staffed at the current level. So overall, if you had a facilities maintenance person designated to that down the line, that would be an added position. And then the other one, and I'm going to walk up here, GIS, the Geographic Information System, looked at the county system. County's really pretty good. Well, the problem is we're not dumping our data into it at the rate we should be, making it not a very useful tool for us. And if that's up and running, it makes everybody else's job easier as they look for data on property, which everybody here does. Let's see. The other option, we have a city engineer being your public works director, and this is pretty much the model that you had before, where you have the wastewater treatment, the technicians, environmental manager, GIS surveyor, public works superintendent, and facilities, all under the engineer. Here we've taken planning right here and put it under this position and changed city engineer to community services. And so that's the difference between the two. Any questions on that? Here, all these people have are at the same level, except possibly, you know, community ed and rec is a different animal altogether. So if you can forgive me on that one, these 5 people would be peers on a team. Here, these are your peers right here. And then these people underneath. That's how the two structures. Now moving into internal services, for lack of a better term, called them internal services. IT, expand that role somewhat. Because overall, and do I have a traveling microphone by any chance?
Yes.
Oh, here we go.
Traveling mic.
And maybe it works a little bit easier to come over here to the chart. When you take a look up here, you understand, first of all, that you see we have an HR director. We also have a communications director. The communications director is taking IT and adding some responsibilities to it. And really looking at it as a complete position now, as opposed to just a niche position. It also eliminates clerk treasurer from the ranks. So a number of activities that the clerk does, or some of them, are related to HR, some of them are related to finance, and some of them are related to the communications director, especially as we're dealing with records. The record system goes electronic. You build your electronic system so you're easier to retrieve things and they're in a central location. Finance takes over the treasurer responsibilities, and HR takes over human resource responsibilities that just about everybody shares, but are concentrated now in finance, clerk, and city administrator. So that's what the map looks like. When we took a look, I talked to the hospital, I talked to the school, and I talked to the county about, you know, here are HR activities. What's your capacity? Is there any opportunity that you have to help us out here? We partner up. And I got no, no, no. So, and for a number of reasons, which were sound reasons, either they'd have to tool up their capacity, the system that they have isn't going to be compatible with the contracts and whatnot that we have here. So we kind of abandoned the idea of partnering up. And looked at that in a number of things. Looked at that in assessing. Assessing was flat, told out, no, we don't have the capacity for it right now. And and really when you did the math and you talk, when I talked to the assessing folks and we kind of looked through it, how much are you going to save? Well, I don't know that you would save anything if the county turned around and charged you for the same services. If the county doesn't charge you for it, there would be some savings there. So it all depends on how that math is going to work. But anyway, they're not going to do it, so it's a moot. But we did explore those ideas. That basically, in a nutshell, goes through the alignment. You desperately need HR. A lot of the responsibilities can be absorbed in finance, HR, and communications of the clerk, and you can eliminate this position. Over on community services area, I recommend if you can't do the whole plan, the things that you concentrate on immediately are hiring a engineering tech and an engineer. The thing you have to decide here is what's the reporting structure going to be like, because that impacts who you hire. If you go through the model that is designed here, you hire a designing engineer who isn't going to have nearly as much responsibility to be supervising. If you go with the public works, more director engineer, you're going to hire a slightly different, well, quite a bit different person for a different purpose. So those are sort of the options that I see on the table right now. Oh, and third, go about the process of hiring an HR, bring the HR director. Their help and expertise is going to bring out the rest of the plan into action if this is what you choose to do. This is the board drawn very nicely by a computer, but it's accomplishing the same thing here. Excuse me. Shows our community services director and the activities below. Police and fire stay the same. Communications director, computer and technical help, website, WRAC, and then adding records management to the role, HR director, you can see, and finance director. Another option, because everybody likes options, right, would be to take either your HR director or your finance director, and they would be moved up to a position called Assistant City Administrator, HR Director, and you create a team here of finance, communications, and human resources. You could easily put finance up here too and switch places. The idea behind HR is that you're going to be sharing that with utilities. And that, so the utilities personnel, the city personnel going under there, that person's going to be very busy. That might be a tough role for them right there. But that's what it would look like in a flow chart. And that's how I feel after I'm done with that. So, but any questions?
Mr. Mayor, do you want to call us, or should we just talk? Or
Just go ahead.
I have several, but I'll just go with one. Can you help me understand a little bit what GIS really is, what it does, why it's needed? I've tried to review this, and I'm just a little bit fuzzy on how that becomes a full-time position.
GIS is Geographic Information System. And what it does is it puts data from property into a retrievable file system, basically is what it is. So I call up your house number 325 Main Street, and on it, it shows the year your house was built. It shows the utilities, when you had the water break in front of your house, where the water pipe is positioned, shows where your electric is buried, if it is, your sub pump. It has a number of items. Oh, and that building permit that you forgot to pull on the deck, but we got it later. We understand that. So those type of things are recorded on the GIS system. So let's say you're doing an upgrade, or let's say the fire department is responding, or something is going on with that property, or assessors want to review it. The entire history of that property is there. There's also segments for our right-of-way. So in the street, you can see where the shutoff valve is. You can see where all of the piping lies. Here is the infrastructure for internet. Here's the infrastructure for phone. Here's the so it really provides you an integrated map of all the property in the community. And you can be getting that from a variety of places right now. Right now, you can go up on the county's website, and it'll provide you with a certain amount of that information. The tool is only as good, though, as the updates that are provided to it. So once it gets out of date from city data, then it becomes unreliable. So you can look up parts of it, but not all of it. If you want to find out what your assessment is, if you want to find out all of this stuff, it can be populated into the GIS system. That's how the tool is used. So basically, your planner, your administrator, you as council members can go directly to the parcel in question, call it up, and hopefully it's populated with the data that's going to allow you to answer the questions quickly and effectively. It also gives the residents an ability to look up their own property and find out the answers, so maybe they don't even have to contact the city on it.
Okay. I'm hearing, it seems like that would be a lot of upfront work. I mean, we've got some things in assessing, there'd be a lot of work upfront. Then it would be a maintenance type thing to make sure that you kept it up to date, as you say. So
Yes.
heavy to begin with, and then maybe not so busy after it's all in.
Yeah, you're right. There is a heavy amount of input at first. You may even need help to get it all in if you're going to do that, because it's a lot of data entry. Then after that, some of the maintenance. That's why anytime you talk GIS, you look at public works and you go, or excuse me, engineering, and you go, yeah, that makes sense. All the data they're generating to get a GIS person representing that on the mapping. But then you come over here to communications director, and I could make just as good an argument, because they're typically your tech people who have an extensive computer background as well and can be of significant help to your IT.
Okay.
So when times get a little slow, if you will, we don't have the data input time, I would say they quickly can morph over here.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman DeBleek?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community Services Director, or that type of position, what kind of skills would that person have? Would that be in engineering, or what kind of background or skills would you expect to see in that type of position? Or is it totally administrative? Or?
It's more administrative and more community development. So I mean, an engineer could fit in there. So if someone with an engineering background who's worked on development, city development, would work well. Somebody with a background in pure community development, planning, economic development, that type of field would work. But they would have to have a broad spectrum of experience in both design and implementation. Those are the two keys: design projects and implement. And the real key here is that strategic thinking and being able to get these groups. This becomes a team: planner, wastewater, engineer, public works, building maintenance becomes a team of equals under this scenario. And so their real job is coordinating those individuals.
Okay. And you talked about move on a little bit, cross-training, as far as cross-training people, various departments or various work functions to be able to all come together to do certain functions like plowing snow or the more employee.
Well, if you have a building maintenance department and you have some janitorial staff in there, which you're getting, what I'm suggesting is that there's a certain amount of cross-training that can go on there so they can provide some support to Public Works at times. Yes. Before I was indicating that this might be a trade-off where Public Works, you could go down a person and come over here to building maintenance. I'm not sure that would work effectively. I've talked to the crew on that, and they think I'm nuts. So, and you know, politely so. But if you take a look at the workload that they currently have and what they're able to produce, if we start shrinking them, we're gonna compromise some of their activities, and I was able to see that. So, but that doesn't mean that we don't cross-train here. I still think we cross-train and provide people who can do lower level types of plowing and snow clearance.
How about
That's something that we're going to have to get used to in the future. Even as we add roads and whatnot, we're going to have to be able to utilize people in different roles.
How about the use of part-time staff? What's your thought on that as far as summer help for mowing, even winter help for snow plowing if it's available, part-time people?
Well, we do a certain amount of that right now, and that's going to continue. You're not going to be able to hire everybody to handle peak situations of mowing, or the Public Works crew can't possibly handle all of the snow in 4 hours. I mean, right now, wastewater treatment, they take care of plowing in certain areas around their access points, their parking lots, their lift station areas and whatnot. They do their own cleaning of this area, and some of the various buildings are maintained by staff at those buildings. So it's not completely on Public Works right now, and yes, we do use part-time staff.
The other area down is compliance, as far as compliance with state, federal regulations, and compliance as far as OSHA and other safety-related compliance issues. Would that be something that would all tie underneath the HR functions?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The safety officer would really become, those duties would fall into the HR. I mean, there's quite a few. I don't want to lump everything into HR. Each department, especially when you start dealing with Public Works, has a certain amount of their own training that they put themselves through and whatnot. But the records maintenance and the overall safety officer would become HR, an HR responsibility to oversee, make sure that that is being taken care of, or coordinating that with your Public Works people. Police, fire.
Councilman Johnson, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fersman, I guess I'm curious, you know, you've recommended some shifts and new positions, and I'm wondering what data you had for determine what the staffing level needs were and so on.
Well, it was, you really took a look at the function of the positions as far as the various roles and responsibilities that the staff have. So I took a look in Public Works, looked at all the duties and responsibilities that they have across the board. And you take a look at how effective and how are they able to get their work done. And most of that data, I mean, I can't go out and physically observe everybody and go, all right, this is how much you're doing and this is how much you're doing. And so we rely on the existing data that the city has.
And I guess from your comments, I'm presuming you got that data from interviews with staff and
And yeah, you've got budget data, you've got records, you've got a supplemental worksheet data on the various parks that you provide, for example, streets, miles, all of this stuff is data-driven.
Okay, another question I had here, you know, every time it seems that there's any discussions, excuse me, about merging services with other governmental entities that are duplicating or doing the same thing, seems like there's always a reason why we can't do that. I mean, you know, you indicated you had discussions and explored it with some of the other agencies, hospital, municipal utilities, and so on. It's like, well, it can't be done. And you talk to the county, and some of these it's based on, well, our system's different than yours, so we can't, you know, they're not compatible, that kind of thing. Wouldn't that suggest that as a long-term goal, we should be looking at ways to standardize some of these functions or make them more compatible so that in the long term we can accomplish some of these elimination of some of these duplicate services and merge them with other entities?
Oh, I have no doubt that if you were building it from scratch and you were under the same HR systems across the board, that being able to merge systems like that would be pretty, I mean, it would be pretty simple to do, but you're still talking about the volume of work that an individual would be able to handle. Depending on how you picture HR is human resources. If their task is simply generating payroll, simply generating contracts for insurance and keeping records, you could probably extend that out to a lot more staff than what you have. But if they're going to be intricately involved in training, and if they're going to be involved with employee welfare, being a place to go with an issue or problem that you don't feel comfortable anywhere else going, HR often does that as well. Then you've really become a resource for individuals. I'd like to better my career. I'd like to do something. I'd like to do some more training. I want to find out how to supervise my employees better. I want to talk to you, HR director, about the way I'm doing performance reviews right now of the individuals who report to me. Why am I not getting through to them? Is there something that I can do better? And so the HR person becomes more than just a number pushing this and here, and is actually a resource to help people elevate their performance.
Thank you.
Further comments? Councilman Christensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Richard. One option that hasn't been discussed, and that's to leave our structure as it is, with a couple minor changes. You know, the present structure has been here for at least 26 years and has worked. And I suspect that if our previous administrator was still on board, we wouldn't be having these discussions. I personally could see HR as a separate department. However, planning and development used to be under Public Works. They use the engineer for questions on building permits, planning and zoning, and all the inspectional services. I could see maybe moving that below Public Works, hiring an engineer and an assistant engineer so they could do more in-house, but the engineer being the head of Public Works. That would be my suggestion. I think the system's worked well, and it continues to. But an HR could be a separate department. So we'd have two changes: planning and development go below Public Works, and then create an HR department.
So basically this one, only planning slipping under a Public Works director.
I don't know if it's exactly that one. I mean, that doesn't look like this, which is our present one.
I have a question. You know, who exactly is in charge? I mean, is it the city administrator or is it the council? I see on top here, the city council, all right, is missing from that, and I'm just wondering, who's in charge?
Well, on option, once you pull all the organization together, you see where, you see how the council is identified. When I'm trying to minimize some of the, like here, this is a slice of the organization pie, it's not the whole thing. This shows the entire thing put together, which identifies all of the pieces. When I'm talking about specific pieces at a time, I'm really trying to do some shorthand here for clarity on the document. I'm not trying to suggest that, you know, the city administrator somehow doesn't have a reporting requirement. That's why I use a complete option chart up here, which shows council right here.
Are there any further questions or comments? Councilman Anderson?
Thank you. Yeah, I got several, but I'm only going to go with a couple. HR is very important. I mean, of course, I have a bias coming as a former HR director. I have a bias, and I recognize that. But talk a little bit about sharing that with the utilities, how you think that might work, percentage-wise, how much of the time would it be with the utilities, how much time at the city?
Well, if you go by numbers of 140 or so, you can look at it from a ratio that way. That's one way to take a look at it. Immediately, an HR director is going to have an incredible amount of work with just helping with the structural formation here and hiring of certain people, if you adopt this. If you don't, then they're going to be busy updating people's personnel files. They're going to be doing job description clarifications and upgrades, and you're going to see more of that need here at first than you will over in the utilities side of it. But once things settle down, the ratio should be pretty 140. So
Roughly one-third, two-thirds.
Yeah.
Kind of.
yeah, in which they would contribute to the general fund for that position.
Did you speak to the utilities? Are they,
Yeah.
they're amenable to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we didn't exactly talk about how it would be divided, because we did talk about merging together to do HR work, and that they would want to be part of that. As far as one-third, two-thirds, we didn't sit down and exactly do it, but that's approximately the math that I...
In concept,
Yeah.
they're on board.
Yeah.
Okay, then I have a question. At the end of the day, with these various options, what's the change in staffing levels?
Okay. I think it's better, and it's easier if I go to the...
It's there.
Right here. On this side, if you adopted this model, you would essentially hire a facilities maintenance coordinator. That would be an added position. You would hire a community services director, but lose the planning director. So that's a wash. And if you decided to go with GIS, that would be another position. So you would have a net 2 here. Originally, I said that there would be 1, and that 1 would be GIS if you wanted to go there. Looking at and discussing this further with Public Works, I don't think that you can draw another person out of there and expect them to maintain at the level they are. So if you go facilities maintenance person, a director in this case, so you're looking at a +2 if you took these 2 positions. Compared to what's budgeted for. Now, obviously, you don't have an engineer right now, and you don't have the engineering tech or the environmental officer, all positions that you had and that are populated in your budget. So when you take a look, so depending on how you ask the question, when someone leaves and you replace them, does that mean you're adding a position? I would say no, you're not adding a position, you're just backfilling from your vacancies. And so when you're talking about a pure added position, you have facilities maintenance, and that doesn't have to happen right away, and GIS. Neither one of those are like, do that right now this year. The ones that I'm suggesting this year are engineering tech and engineer.
Okay, and then the other side of the chart is a wash? Is that what I to understand? In fact,
Yes,
we might pick
yes.
up- we might pick up
You
a
would
third
lose the
person.
clerk treasurer, and you already have an IT director. IT director takes on some additional tasks and is really involved in internal and external communications then. I think communications director is a better title for that position. You would have an HR director in finance. Now, there are certain duties that the clerk treasurer does that you begin to say, well, that's an awful lot of work to be pushed into a finance director, and will the finance director be able to handle all those additional, you know, for example, the Wilmer Festival. Right now, there's a representative from the clerk's office that attends that, and other assignments as well. I originally had looked at this saying those are activities that could be spread out among different departments. If not, then they may need a lower level half-time position here. But right now, the way I have it set out is that there would be no net change.
Okay. In fact, you really pick up a third of a person. I mean, the utilities is going to pick up a third of a cost.
You pick up a third of the position, but you're also going to you're going to be paying more here. This position is a wash with clerk as far as salary and compensation. Here, you're going to pick up some costs. But with you're right, with the HR sharing, from a financial standpoint, when you take a look at this, it's negligible. You may even go down in costs.
Okay.
Here, if you do tech and engineer and the community services director here, given the difference with your planner or planning director leaving or the position going, and these already being on the budget, you're really looking at this is kind of a wash. You're eliminating one. They're going to be possibly paid slightly more, but right now your pay structure up here is such that everybody on this line gets paid the same, which I'm not in particular agreement with, but I don't make the rules around here. But I think there's different levels of responsibility and exposure by those individuals, and that might be something you would want to review. I would highly recommend you review the pay structure up here. They may have the same reporting structure to the city administrator, but that's a rabbit hole I didn't want to go down, but there I went.
Yeah, well, there are some restrictions.
I understand.
Is there any further questions?
Question, you're talking about, you know, like systems, like type work. Communications director, did you research that with the hospital and utilities as far as like positions in those two arenas? If
We really covered a wide.
Any opportunities to share with IT type services?
I rather pointedly stepped on very directly assessing with the county, HR with the county, GIS with the county, and other services that would be, and then kind of put the broad net out there. What other services haven't we really talked about yet that you think we could bring up right now that would make sense? One of them being police. Police services are provided by the county. Is it really, you know, as you start looking at the ownership that we have, and again, go back to my slide on $9 a month, you know, what are you getting for that? And thought that would be too emotionally difficult, you know, to go down. So take that off the. And then we started exploring at other things like IT and whatnot. Given the physical nature of that service relative to the people in the building, you really need somebody there in the building with you to go through that. Okay, upgrade that computer, troubleshoot this, provide this service to this person. And then you also have WRAC reporting. We went there, but I didn't find anybody who was adequately staffed to do it. So they would have to add just as many staff as we would lose. And if they do that, then they're charging us back. And everybody said, yeah, no, it's not the type of thing we would be able to share with you at this time.
Mm-hmm. And then Mayor had commented about the authority and how the authority flows. See, one box that's missing on here is legal. Where would that necessarily fit in?
Legal wouldn't change at all. I assume that reporting relationship was off the table. Legal is not going to start reporting to the administrator, or
No.
That's just not going to happen.
Further question,
I do,
comments?
Mayor.
Councilmember?
Your recommendation has been for option 1, correct? I'm just wondering if you would just walk through one more time, because we're flattening out the structure a little bit, and if I'm picking this up correctly, the advantages to the reporting structure of having both under the Community Services Director, but also how that alignment flows to the city administrator.
Are we talking about this structure or the other one?
I can't see that one, so let's look here.
different.
That's the half of it. I was
Oh,
looking at
okay.
the whole chart.
Yep, this one right
There it
here.
is.
Okay. The structure really, pretty simple. Well, for me, I drew it. You had your Community Services Director, Police Chief, Fire Chief, the Communications Director, HR Director, and Finance Director, all reporting to the administrator. That would be your department head team. The city administrator would also have an administrative assistant. Someday you might want to look at assistant to the administrator. You know, the title, beef that position up a little bit, provide a little bit more support there. Community ed continues to be a sort of bifurcated. It's in two places at once. It's run by the school district using city personnel. So it's an interesting arrangement that sort of has a foot in two doors there, and I think that relationship would stay. So that's in essence what we'd be having there. So what did we drop? Like I said, from the reporting right now, the clerk treasurer would no longer be reporting, as that position would be gone, and the planning director would be gone. The advantages, I think I touched on, human resources right now are scattered all over the city, and they're not being attended to. Contracts, employee maintenance, the policies, negotiation, risk management, it is scattered throughout the city, and it's really haphazard. People are doing the best they can, but it's not in the hands of an HR professional, and it's a profession for a reason. A communications director would take on the responsibility of taking more communications outside City Hall and all the records management. So that's a reporting change. The finance director would take on the responsibilities of the treasurer and some of the and oversight of the clerk. So the clerk who's handling elections and other functions like that would be reporting to the finance director. Police and fire do not change. And under community services, the planning, senior planner, wastewater treatment, public works, facilities maintenance, and the engineer would be a team of equals reporting to the community services director. The advantages of this is putting all of their activity under one director. I think Ron said that earlier, putting them under one director as previously. Now, here it's community services director. I think the old suggestion was that it's under an engineer or public works director. One way or the other, the reason I separated it out was to give an engineer more time to do the engineering.
If I may, I would like to ask a question about this. Somewhere I read about a survey of the citizens, and the citizens are above the city council. Am I right?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're above everybody. I mean, that's who we're here for.
And that's who we try to work with to take care of the citizens of this city. So somewhere I read about a survey of the community in your report, and could you explain that to us, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think it's, like I said, the people I spoke with in the community, I spoke to some focus groups, I spoke to some individuals whose names you provided. It was a nice sample, but it wasn't complete. And I think if you want to get going deeper into where the community wants to go, how they rate the services, I think you can do a community-wide survey to do that.
Who would we speak to about a community survey?
Mary Annies? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Certainly there are firms that do that. I mean, that's something that if you're going to do a survey, there are firms that do that, help design that. It's probably not something that the city, it is not something, in my opinion, the city is currently staffed to undertake ourselves. I mean, we could certainly prepare questions and assist in that, but doing that survey, typically cities use a professional survey company to assist in that and gather the data and then collate that data and provide that data back to the city.
The big one in Minnesota is Decision Resources, and they've done an awful lot of surveys across the state. And what would be nice is then that you can have some comparable data, so you can see how do we compare to Worthington, how do we compare to Red Wing, so you get
Ultimately, that's who we work for.
pardon?
Ultimately, that's who we work for as the citizens of the
Right.
city.
Mary Ann.
Councilmember?
Just a clarification, when you're talking about a survey of citizens, you're talking about a survey of the services that the city provides, the services that we do versus the organizational structure?
Thank you, Councilmember. I put a rather broad statement on that. Really, it's the survey can be constructed any way you want. Maybe you want ideas about the future. What would you like to see in the future? What are some activities? What are things that we're not currently providing that we should? What are things that we're providing currently that maybe you think we shouldn't? And then, how do you rank us based on criteria here on the following service? How is our patrol? How is our snow plowing, the street maintenance, other things like that? I mean, there's all types of things you can get depending on the data you want to use it for. How do you want to use the survey material is, I guess, what I was looking at. I asked rather open-ended questions when I met with people. First, tell me a little bit about what you see at the city. Give me your impressions of what's going on. So these are very open-ended questions I start with when I'm interviewing the people in the groups. You would probably want to have much more specific questions that you're asking and mining from people.
Okay.
Councilmember?
I have another question. If we were to adopt option one or a version of option one, will you see a phase-in over a period of time? I know you talked about the HR being critical and obviously getting someone on board for engineering, but how do you see some of the other changes flowing? Is that a different subject?
No, that's a great question. You're right. I see the need for engineering is so great that, immediately go there, engineer, technician, and HR. As far as the other structure, what would be really nice, to tell the truth, is your HR is in place before the other structural things happen, because then they're going to be able to help with those components. So this might be a 2 to 3 year plan here.
Okay.
Maybe even longer to get it fully implemented. The question you have to ask yourself, though, before you hire the engineers, how is that reporting structure going to work? That's the one thing we can't wait for. And I think it's important, too, when I went through this, I really took a look at it from what is the position calling for rather than personalities. You had to take personalities out of it. Who might fill this from within? Who might not? How are we going to hire? Well, what it was really a look at is functionally what would work the best.
Councilman Anderson.
Thank you. I think we need to remember, this is what we asked you to do. Part of what we asked you to do was give us some thoughts and ideas on the organizational structure, and that's what you've done. And I think we need to think about and ponder this. I'll tell you, I am intrigued with option 1. I also kind of like option 2, where you have the assistant administrator, HR director. I can see some merit. Do you have a preference one way or the other, and why?
From a reporting, I'm going to be a politician here. Sorry about that. From a reporting number of direct reports, I like option 2, the span of control. You have an administrator who needs to give a lot of attention, or should be, to the council, to the mayor. And so that's 9 reports right there. Also to the outside agencies in which we meet with quite a bit. So we've got a lot of activities going on in planning. So from that aspect, having your administrative team focused in one group would be an advantage for reporting. Option 1 I like, because when we were working with the department directors and talking about the optimal alignment, I think one of the critical factors in this is that we see these groups now as then equals with equal access to the administrator, and this is the chart that they were most comfortable with. And there's a lot of change up here already, and if you're going to be doing that, I really like to use the wisdom of the organization more than mine when it comes to this. So one has the advantage, less reports. This one has the advantage of providing a little bit more access for the finance director and the communications director to go to the administrator directly.
I do have to ask this question. I highlighted it in here, and it says the relationship between the mayor and the administrator is doing great harm to the organization and reputation of the city. What the heck do you mean by that?
Well, maybe, and Mayor, if you could, I would suggest that we take a look at the structural capacity up here first. Once we get the questions done on that, if we want to go back, I really wanted to make this forward-looking. The comments, that comment or issue came from comments that we received from. It's not an interpretation. It's a reflection of what we were hearing. So I'd like to keep that in a separate context, because I really think you've really taken some great steps. You've identified that you're going to come together as a group and go, and you're going to hit a planning retreat and do some things to try and look at how those relationships could work better. And I really think you're on the way to do that. So I don't want to just cut, make more cuts there. I'd really like to look forward. But if you want to go back to that at the end, I'd be happy to address that. But at least now, my feeling on it is that you're doing the right things, and let's keep doing it. Let's keep going that direction.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? This is your opportunity. Councilman Dokken?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming tonight. How many folks would you say you've spoken to? About 100 or something over 100?
Yeah, a little over 100.
Okay. In 12, we had an election. We have 10,000 citizens in our city eligible to vote, about 10,000, 2,500 in each ward. The electorate came out and they spoke at those elections. Sometimes I wonder if we're going to change organizationally, what I need to hear is what's the job description and the duties and responsibilities, and why are you lining it up the way you are? I mean, what is the rationale behind suggesting this? I mean, is there a savings of time, of money, a better way of coordinating, or what is your thought on this?
Well, I went back to the assumptions. The assumptions that I had to deal with were that the organization was going to continue to provide the services in the same level as when we started this operation. It wasn't a there wasn't really clear direction as to, do we shrink the organization? Do we want to provide fewer services? Do we want to contract out? It was really continue to provide the same level of services, take a look at our organization, and take a look at other agencies where you could possibly, partner up with. And I think we did all of that. The structure that you see right now is designed, I don't want to go through the entire explanation again, but the HR duties are specifically scattered, which is one reason I'm suggesting that we add an HR director. I see so much duplication between what you would have in the treasurer position with finance, that those things could be brought together fairly easily. Would you have to? No. But essentially, I'm trying to make room within your budget and within your structure for an HR professional, because that is more sorely needed at this point. Can you absorb some of the treasurer responsibilities in finance? Yes, you can. Can you absorb some of the clerk responsibilities in your IT professional as far as record management? Yes, you can do that as well. And so that's the basis for it. I mean, if we had unlimited funds, we could keep the clerk treasurer and add an HR person as well. But I just don't see your structure being able to maintain that, and I don't know that it's necessary. So that's why I did that. It's bringing it down into a manageable number, but assigning duties to a professional that you sorely need, which is in human resources. Again, unlimited resources, keep the clerk treasurer. On the other side, facilities maintenance, I think I explained that, but if we operated our homes the way you operate your facilities, eventually they would break down. We change our filters regularly. When it needs cleaning, we clean it. We keep these things together, and we put maintenance into our home, because we know if we don't keep up that paint, if we don't change those filters, if we don't do the routine maintenance on our roof, that we're asking for trouble down the line. Our property is going to be worth much less, and then we have a major expense. So that's why I'm looking at that as a major concentration area. engineering really isn't reinventing anything at all. It's really saying, do we want to have engineering services contracted out, or do we want to put them in-house? The relationship between engineering and public works, between engineering and planning, and the engineering, especially through the environmental officer and the wastewater treatment plant, create an opportunity here to create a team that really, putting it on paper how it already exists, engineering, planning, public works, wastewater treatment, these people work very well together. And it was a matter of saying, all right, if this is what we have and this is how they're structured right now, can we create one cohesive team on paper to go along with what's already happening? And so that was the basis for it. Create a team of equals that continue to work together across the board. Now, they have to report to somebody. So do you want them to report to the engineer / public works director and throw planning under that? It's accomplishing the same thing, basically. I'm not, going to do somersaults out of here one way or the other. The whole purpose behind the structure that I put in place was to create an environment in which the head engineer would be able to spend more time on drafting and using their engineering talents, so we're not having to contract out as much. That's basically the weight behind the suggestion. So once again, sure, you could be adding a facilities maintenance person. If the facilities maintenance person saves one building or one major repair, they'll pay for themselves. Adding a GIS person, that's your biggest die right there. I think it's going to improve the service delivery that you give, and it's going to make every job up there easier. HR, not so much. But everybody else's job is going to become easier by having that up there. So when it comes time for, as your population increases, you take on more and more responsibilities, you probably won't have to add like you would, hopefully you wouldn't have to add staff. Tried to make this so it is something for the future. Anyway, that's the rationale, sir. Thank you.
Was there something in the preliminary report about the HR director? I don't recall it.
No, thank you, Mayor. When I first came before the board, the council, a question was asked, can you concentrate on engineering first? Can you get us something of what you would recommend before the whole report is complete? And I said, sure, I'll get you a phase 1 in here to talk about the engineering position first, and then I'll complete the rest of the work. That's why you didn't see anything on HR. I was basically trying to get in ahead of as quickly as I could to address the engineering issue, because it's causing so much pain in the city right now.
I'd like to bring this in front of the council. Should I open it up to the public and to the press, or shall we call it an evening?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I think that would be,
I think I'd like to open it up to the public then. Do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Fersman or Mrs. Fersman? Press? Okay. Then we'll bring it back to the council, and shall we adjourn? Unless you have a question?
Yes, just a comment. We all know it's a no-brainer we need an engineer, and I think we should have an assistant engineer also, because they're somewhat revenue neutral. We have budgeted for an engineer. However, when they're doing the work in-house, they're putting a 15% fee on the developments they're doing. So they're bringing in money to pay for that office. So that's a no-brainer. I personally think that engineer needs to be the head of public works. It has worked for us in the past, and we've had an assistant engineer in the past also, and they were able to work together, and get a lot of work done in that department. In your report, you also mentioned, again, as you did in the preliminary one, that the city has spent X amount of dollars for contracting engineering out, 200 and some $1,000. We will do that anyway. That happens even if we have the engineer and assistant engineer. There's some of that's going to be contracted out. We got Bolton and Mink, Donahue and Bolig all in town here, and we use them presently. I personally think we need to swallow this and to think about it for a while. And there's a lot here. You've given us some good options, and I appreciate the work you've done. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Fersman. Mrs. Fersman? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Well,
Councilman?
I think we need to either accept the report and refer it to labor or something with it. Just, walk away and let it lay on the table. It's not going to be picked up, or nothing's going to happen with it for.
Can I get a comment on that from you, either Charlene or Kevin?
Mary
I mean, I
Ann.
think that's the council's decision of how you move forward with this from this. I mean, obviously, the report's in front of you. There are some recommendations. How you choose to act on them, can be discussed as a full council, could be discussed as a committee. That's really the council's choice.
Mary Ann.
Councilmember?
I would recommend that we have another session as a full council to deal with this. I think it's a big enough issue that we all should be involved with it.
Councilman?
That basically is what I was going to say. I think this is big enough. I think everybody needs to have their input, and I think we should have another work session where we can hash it around by ourselves and come to some conclusions.
Do you want to make that a motion?
Well, we have a motion on the table to adjourn. In fact, and a second.
There wasn't a second.
I think there was.
There wasn't a second on that.
I didn't hear.
That's just parliamentary procedure.
Yeah.
No big deal. Is that you that did a second?
Pardon? I thought I did.
I'd make a motion that we refer it to have another work session with the full council to review the organizational study.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded to refer the
Soon.
business at hand to the full council at another work session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. We will have a work session at another date to discuss it amongst the council. Now, do we have a motion on the table to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you. Okay. Yeah, nice to see you again. Yes, thank you.